6 new shows to talk about this week, including 2 highly publicized revivals, Punky Brewster and a new Superman show called Superman and Lois over on the CW. Also, a lot of news, including a whole slate of new revivals coming to Paramount Plus, which CBS All Access has turned into, and as well the winners of the television awards at the Golden Globes. Let's talk TV. Hey everybody, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, TV news and reviews for the week. Welcome to the show. Like I said, we've got 6 new shows to talk about. We've got a new game show over on Fox called Cherries Wild, a couple of drama shows on Netflix, an HBO Max and UK mashup called It's a Sin, and the Punky Brewster and Superman new shows that I mentioned earlier. But first, we've got a ton of news, including a lot of stuff from Paramount Plus, which is now the new CBS All Access. But let's first talk about the Golden Globes, because, of course, this video is a couple of days late. I've been trying to get them out on Sundays or Mondays, but with all my movie watching that I had to do in preparation for the Golden Globes, I fell a little behind on my TV stuff for the week. But let's talk about what won at the Globes this year. Mostly The Crown, I'll be honest. I don't watch The Crown, so I can't speak to whether they deserved it or not, but The Crown won Best Drama, Best Actor and Actress for Josh O'Connor and Emma Corrin, respectively. However, I can talk more about the other things that won, because most of them I've seen. Gillian Anderson, by the way, also won Supporting Actress for The Crown, but in terms of the comedies, well, Schitt's Creek took the Best Comedy Series, which makes sense. It's the final season for that, the last chance for the awards. And really, award shows came very late to the Schitt's Creek thing, so makes sense that they would give that an award. The only other big winner, though, from that show was Catherine O'Hara for Best Actress in a Comedy, which I think made a lot of sense. I mean, she was by far, I think, the hands-on favorite. And I think the other people on the show had a little bit more competition. For example, Jason Sudeikis won for Best Actor in Ted Lasso, which, thank you. I think that is a great show. It was one of my top picks of 2020. So I was very glad to see him win that. But, I mean, that whole category, was pretty stacked, including Eugene Levy for Schitt's Creek. But my real favorite show of all of 2020 was The Queen's Gambit, and Anya Taylor-Joy won for Best Actress in a miniseries or TV film, and then it also won for Best Miniseries or Television Film. So that was wonderful, good to know. And then for Best Actor, Mark Ruffalo, which I thought was a bit of a surprise, but I loved. I know this much is true. I think maybe some of the other people were better contenders. For example, maybe Ethan Hawke for The Good Lord Bird. But Mark Ruffalo playing twins, very different from each other, I think is probably what got him over the edge there. And it is a really great performance, so I would say look for that one coming up at the Emmys as well. And then the only one we didn't really talk about yet is Best Supporting Actor overall, and that's for series, miniseries, or TV film. And John Boyega took that for Small Axe. Now, I reviewed Small Axe as a film series, but Amazon does list it episodes 1 through 5, and is sort of listing it as a TV miniseries. With streamers, it's always hard to tell. So I'm not sure what the Oscars will think of it, whether they would consider Small Axe movies or television. But obviously, Amazon submitted it in the miniseries category instead of the film category. So they may shoot for Emmys with that, as opposed to Oscars. But John Boyega did, a very, very good job, of course. He usually does in his one film for Small Axe. So, all right, let's move on. There's so much news. I don't want to dwell too long on anything, so let's just talk about the renewals for the week. The Simpsons renewed again, 2 more seasons, 33 and 34, by the end of this run. Family Guy and Bob's Burgers already had more commitments for 2 years, so they will be on through the same seasons as well. Now The Simpsons is joining them. The show actually is, at this point, a loss leader for the network because of how expensive it is to pay everybody and this and that and the other thing. But it generates huge profits for the studio, which is now owned by Disney. So they've decided to keep it going for that regards. And in terms of voice casting, of course, Simpsons has been under a little bit of fire the last few years, maybe more than a little bit, with characters like Apu being voiced by white actors like Hank Azaria. So Kevin Michael Richardson, who has worked on various characters for The Simpsons, over 70 episodes at this point, takes over the Dr. Hibbert role from Harry Shearer. Now, Harry Shearer is so good as a voice actor. I honestly don't think I knew. I'm sure I knew at some point that Julius Hibbert was voiced by Harry Shearer, but if you would ask me who voiced him, I probably would have said Hank Azaria, because he just voices so many of the characters on the show. But no, apparently it was Harry Shearer voicing it, and the episode that aired just this past weekend, that will be the final one with Harry Shearer in that role. So Kevin Michael Richardson will take over for the rest of this season and on. Fox will also, speaking of their animation, this isn't necessarily renewal news, but they will add a second animation lineup on Mondays for the summer. They've never really ventured outside of the Sunday, situation for those animated shows, except for, of course, in the early 90s when The Simpsons was famously on Thursday nights against The Cosby Show. But for the most part, I mean, that was only lasted 3 years or something, and then they brought it back to Sunday. So for the last almost 30 years, The Simpsons has been on Sunday, along with a lot of their other animated series. Of course, back in the 90s, it was only The Simpsons, and then you had like the X-Files and stuff like that, Married with Children. But, ever since Family Guy and American Dad and Bob's Burgers and all of that stuff, King of the Hill, for the most part, Sunday nights the last 15 to 20 years has been primarily animation. Yes, they have Last Man on Earth there for a little bit, and they had Brooklyn Nine-Nine there for a little bit, but for the most part. So now, though, they have 7 different animated shows in the lineup, and, they've got the Bless the Hearts on now, they've got The Great North. So starting in the summer, on Mondays, they're going to have a new show called Housebroken, which features the voices of Lisa Kudrow, Nat Faxon, Will Forte, and others, and that will pair with Duncanville, which will be in its second season. That features Amy Poehler, and that starts on May 31st with that lineup. And then their Sunday lineup will be in, I guess, mostly reruns for the summer, but maybe there'll be some new episodes of Bless the Hearts, I don't know. But animation is where Fox has really risen above some of their competition during the pandemic, because animation is very easy to produce at somebody's house, and they just farm out the animation, they farm out the voice work, whatever. You don't need to have actors on a set interacting with each other. So when all the other networks were kind of struggling with what to do for fall lineups, Fox was like, well, we've got 5 shows ready to go right now because they're all animated. So it makes sense that they would sort of have doubled down on their animation efforts. Superman and Lois has been renewed for season 2. We're going to be reviewing that on this episode coming up. And just 2 days after the season premiere, series premiere, I should say, aired, CW is saying, yes, we want to be in business with Superman and Lois. Season 2 approved. Seth Meyers renewed through 2025 for the late night show. Most of the late night hosts do get 3, 4, 5-year contracts. In fact, the contract of Seth's that is just about to be up was signed in 2016. So, it's no surprise that they're doing, the multi-year deal for a lot of these late night hosts. So that's renewed. Animaniacs renewed for an early season 3, because it was already renewed for 2, or purchased, I should say, for 2 seasons before it aired at all. We'll see season 2 a little bit later this year, and then season 3 after that. And then Nickelodeon has a bunch of preschool shows that they are giving the go-ahead to for more seasons. Paw Patrol will be in for season 9. Blue's Clues and You, season 3. And Santiago of the Sea, their new show, will get a season 2. The series that's ending that I have for the week, Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. That will not be continuing for a season 3 when CBS All Access becomes Paramount Plus this weekend. They are out of the Twilight Zone business. Jordan Peele can shop it elsewhere, I believe. And in fact, his main deal is with Amazon. So he could bring it to Amazon Prime, I assume, or maybe because CBS owns the brand of Twilight Zone, he can't. But he could certainly attach his name to some other similar project and probably get the same type of results. I did not watch the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone, but I heard very, very mixed results. I heard that the hour-long format was not really doing it any favors, and Some episodes were much better than others. So I don't know. I never really delved that far into it. But of course, the original is a classic. But even that, when the last season, when Twilight Zone in the 60s went to an hour-long format, it was not as good, that's for sure. A lot of padding. So speaking of Paramount Plus, let's talk about all of the stuff that they have. So they had their investors meeting or whatever last week and went through a slate of new projects, and most of them actually revival projects, because of course under the Paramount umbrella, part of the reason I think CBS All Access was not a success was because they hinged just about everything on Star Trek and their old catalog shows. So unless you're looking to watch an old Happy Days episode or Beverly Hillbillies or the new Star Trek series, you weren't really going to find too much there. They tried to have other things, The Good Fight, obviously one of my favorites. I talk about it a lot, and very highly regarded critically, but it's not going to bring people to pay for, $8 a month or whatever it was for just that show. But Paramount Plus is bringing all of their classics, which is so weird they didn't do it before with CBS All Access, because, CBS is still owned by Paramount. All Access was owned by Paramount. So why are they waiting for the rebrand? I don't know. But they own Comedy Central, MTV, VH1, a lot of different networks that they are now bringing a lot of things to the table with. So first of all, a revival of Frasier. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is finally being greenlit. Joe and I, when we were reviewing all the Frasier episodes last year, this had been sort of talked about in different interviews with Kelsey Grammer, but it is officially a go. I don't know any plot details, but I know when Grammer was talking about it like a year ago, the idea was that he would be in Chicago and maybe being a psychology professor. I don't know if that's still what they want to do or not. I don't know if all of the cast will be returning. Obviously, John Mahoney has passed away, but also Jane Leeves is on, is it The Resident? It's one of the doctor shows. I think it's The Resident, and she has said she will not be leaving that show to do the Frasier revival. Doesn't mean she couldn't pop in or do both under the right contract, but she said she has no intention of leaving her current series for that. There's also going to be a revival of Criminal Minds. Now, that just went off the air a year ago, but obviously it's been pretty successful with the pandemic and people being shut down and trying to find new things to binge. So people have been binging Criminal Minds, so there's been some renewed interest. That is going to be a 10-episode anthology. So there's going to be a new case each season, and the original cast and original showrunner will be on for that, which makes sense. It just ended a year ago. It's not like they found other work in the pandemic. Then some Comedy Central revivals. Inside Amy Schumer is coming for 5 specials. Reno 911, which Quibi just revived last year. Of course, Quibi is dead. Although I don't think we've talked about this on the news and reviews, but if you did want to see anything from Quibi, Roku has bought out the Quibi library, and I think if you have a Roku, I have a Fire Stick, so I don't know, but if you have a Roku, I think you can watch all the Quibi stuff on your Roku. And we never talked about that, but I think that's true. So anyway, but this is going to be a more serialized Reno 911, and it's going to be called The Hunt for QAnon. And then there's going to be a Workaholics movie. There's going to be a Beavis and Butthead revival, which will kick off with a sequel to Beavis and Butthead Do America, so a new movie coming there. And then there's going to be a 6-episode Trevor Noah show called The Weekly Show. So that's all the Comedy Central products. Now MTV and VH1. Their revivals include Behind the Music, which is like one of my all-time favorite biography shows. Yo MTV Raps is coming back. Unplugged, which they've revived Unplugged like 5 different times, so that's nothing new. Dating Naked from VH1. I don't know. RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars is moving from VH1 to Paramount Plus. And then there's also a new Dave Grohl show called From Cradle to Stage, which obviously will be some sort of biography show as well. Some Nickelodeon revivals. Live-action versions of Dora the Explorer and Fairly Odd Parents are coming. They did that live-action Dora movie a couple of years ago that I thought was really good. I don't know if they have intentions of casting the same girl as Dora, but I thought that worked out very well. And then Nickelodeon also announced, by the way, and I don't know if this is for Paramount Plus or for Nickelodeon. I think it's for Paramount Plus. But the original cast of Rugrats, which includes E.G. Daily, Nancy Cartwright from The Simpsons, Cheryl Chase, and Cree Summer, will reprise all of their Rugrats roles in a new CGI revival of the show. You may have seen some clips of that because they released a trailer last week for that. There's another Yellowstone spinoff coming to Paramount Plus. You know, Paramount Network is home to Yellowstone, this huge show, one of the biggest shows on cable. They already announced one called Y 1883, but this one will be another new one that's tentatively titled 6666. And I don't know what that means, but so there's going to be that show on Paramount Plus. And then the creator of Yellowstone, Taylor Sheridan, has another new show, Mayor of Kingstown, coming to Paramount Plus. And the reason I bring that up is because it stars Jeremy Renner, who's, you know, a huge star in the Marvel world and all of this. So that's interesting. And then Younger, the TV Land original show, will be moving to Paramount Plus for its 7th and final season. And then they'll air later in the year on TV Land. So, I mean, Paramount is really going all out here to say, look, CBS All Access was kind of a turd, you guys, but Paramount Plus, this is where it's at. So my next TV news and reviews will actually be a Paramount Plus Is It Worth It review. So we'll see. I don't know all of the new shows they'll have immediately. I think most of what I'll be talking about is the already existing content. Maybe I'll go over some of this stuff again. But I know the new Real World revival will air this weekend, so I'll have that at least to review next week. A couple of expanded universes are coming to your small screen. The Magic Kingdom Expanded Universe. So Disney is teaming with For All Mankind creator Ron Moore. That one's over on Apple TV Plus. And they're developing a franchise for Disney Plus that is set in Disney's Magic Kingdom. The first project in the works is part of this Magic Kingdom Expanded Universe is called the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, which is set in a world where all the themed lands and characters of the Disney parks actually exist in another reality. So I don't know that we need another expanded universe, but Godspeed. They've obviously known what they were doing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe over at Disney, so I'll give it to them. And then Nickelodeon has Avatar: The Last Airbender Expanded Universe coming, and both Avatar and The Legend of Korra have just increased their viewership year over year because people keep discovering the show, younger generations keep finding it on streamers, etc. And I think they still run both of those shows on Nickelodeon proper too. But they're going to start that universe with a new animated feature film, and that will follow with more shows in the Avatar and Korra universe. So a lot of that stuff is sort of along the same lines of reboots. So let's close our news like we usually do with This Week in Reboots. So there is a celebrity dating game coming to ABC. Of course, they're all in on the game shows. Every night seems to have 2 or 3 different game shows on ABC these days, which is fine by me. And Zooey Deschanel and Michael Bolton will host this. And it sort of, I think, is mixing a dating game type show with The Masked Singer. Because basically what's going to happen is Michael Bolton will sing some clues, and the non-famous suitors will have the opportunity to guess and then date, I guess, the secret identity of the celebrity contestant. So, I mean, it's going to be the type of people that are doing Masked Singer. It's going to be your, Tori Spellings and that kind of thing, I think, will be the celebrities. It's not going to be Brad Pitt here. But, it could be interesting. And there's a G.I. Joe series coming to Amazon with Adrienne Palicki from Friday Night Lights. She is going to be reviving her character Lady J from the 2013 G.I. Joe movie Retaliation. So they're going to base a show around her. Ray Donovan has been revived for a one-off movie, which I think is a good idea. I didn't watch the show, but I know a lot of people that really like that show, and it got canceled very unceremoniously after 7 seasons, just out of the blue. And so Showtime has agreed to have a final movie to just wrap up the series. I always think that's nice when networks do that. There is a Frogger video game. The Frogger video game, I should say, is going to become a show on Peacock. It's going to be a competition challenge show, and so the courses will include testing player strengths, strategy, and problem-solving abilities, and there will be a cash prize involved with that. It'll be the first game show really on Peacock. Mostly their reality shows so far have been more of the the Keeping Up with Kardashians type of reality, like the celebrity type show. So this will be their first competition show. And, look, some of these ideas sound stupid to me, but then I watch it and they're pretty good, so who knows. And then there's also 2 new Transformers shows coming, one for Nickelodeon and one on Netflix that will follow up the current Netflix show War for Cybertron. But these are both going to be aimed at younger viewers, not the PG-13 type audience we get with the Michael Bay movies or even the War for Cybertron, which was, a Japanese production. So this will be for, I would assume probably the 6 to 10 age group, especially the one on Nickelodeon maybe, but on Netflix as well. So, all right. We got through all the news in about 20 minutes. That's all I wanted to do because we have a lot of shows to talk about. I thought about even actually doing some standalone reviews for a couple of these, but I think we'll just lump them all here because I think my channel is inundated with reviews already, so we'll just leave it here. But first, let's talk about Punky Brewster. I was very excited for this show. I watched the original when I was a kid. I'm about the same age as Soleil Moon Frye, who played Punky in the original and revives the character for this show as well. We're within maybe 1 or 2 years of each other. So like I was Punky's age, like we kind of grew up together. I loved the show. It does not hold up very well. It's very corny. It's very cheesy. And, rewatching it a little bit does make me realize what people liked about Full House. I was about 11 when Full House came out, so I was like, this show is stupid, it's so dumb and so corny. Yeah, some of the jokes were okay, I think Dave Coulier is kind of funny, but, for the most part, I was like, this show is moronic, da-da-da-da-da. But rewatching Punky Brewster, because I haven't seen it in 33 or whatever years, I realized, okay, this is why people like Full House, because they grew up with these characters too. I grew up with Punky, I loved this show, but it's really not that good in the grand scheme of things. But anyway, this revival is on Peacock. You can watch all 10 episodes for free, by the way, even if you are not a Peacock subscriber. I love that about Peacock. They are, yes, some shows, they have maybe just 1 episode for everybody, and then if you're a subscriber, you get, the other ones. But this show, you can watch all 10 episodes for free, even if you are not a subscriber to Peacock. So, word of the wise if you want to do that. So, she's now a divorced mother. Soleil Moon Frye, like I said, plays Punky again. And her ex-husband, who has a prominent role in the show, is Freddie Prinze Jr. And she is now raising her 3 children, teenage daughter Hannah, and 2 adopted sons, Diego and Daniel. And she's actually living in the same apartment she grew up in Chicago. Henry, back in the day, the guy from Police Academy, he took her in, and he is, he's passed away. He did live a long time. I think he lived to 99, but he's dead now. And they, pay tribute to him. They have his picture on the wall. She mentions him frequently about, it was so great that Henry left us this apartment, and da-da-da-da-da. So in the first episode, she encounters a young girl named Izzy who reminds her of herself, abandoned by her mother, da-da-da-da-da. And so she decides to foster Izzy in the hopes of adopting her. The final episode of the season shows the adoption case at the court. But she's still friends with her old friend Cherie, played by Cherie Johnson from the original show, which, look, I don't think she's worked much since then. I mean, she did Family Matters. She was a big part of that show, but other than that, she worked a whole lot. No, just minor roles here or there, popping up on different sitcoms for a couple episodes or whatever. But, she's sort of been in the biz, but not front and center for sure. And I never watched Family Matters much, so I don't even remember her being on there really. But anyway, so the basis for this is just, new Punky, named Izzy this time, and Punky sees herself in the girl and wants to sort of help in the same way Henry helped her, and she's trying to get her own family on board and all of this. This show is cute. This show has a lot of heart. It's got some Punky power for sure, but it's really not very funny, and that is the biggest downfall. I mean, look, not everything has to be laugh out loud hilarious, but it unfortunately doesn't really update much of the humor at all from the 80s, except some of the jokes are a little bit more risque and more adult. They talk about boobs and what have you, and people are going on dates, and so Punky's like, okay, Hannah, like, let's, have the talk and all this stuff. And the original didn't quite do that. Now, the original maybe was a little too babyish. It was a little too Full Housey. That's certainly probably true. But if they're going to be a little bit more risque, for example, Freddie Prinze Jr. is there in the morning the one day. Sherry comes over and she's like, "Oh, did you guys?" And they don't ever say, have sex, but anybody that's paying attention will know. And I think might not be good for the same young age that the first Punky was. Even though the main character Izzy, well, I guess the main character is Punky still, but the little girl Izzy, she's probably 7 or 8, which is another problem I do have with it, is that it has the problem of sticking, pithy things in little kids' mouths that they would never say, and they're saying these more adult-type responses and sharp wit that, I don't find believable, and I don't necessarily find it cute when kids do that either. It's not my favorite thing, and it's part of why I really didn't like Full House. Full House was nothing but pithy children the whole show. So I'm a bit mixed on this. I was hoping for more, but I also kind of forgot how probably not that good the original was in the first place. I think this show is going to be good for nostalgia purposes. I did watch 3 full episodes of it to really, give it a good kind of benefit of the doubt here. And I will admit, it does get a little bit funnier as we go along. I think the first episode is real stiff and kind of, tugging at the heartstrings a little too much with the Henry stuff and the, Izzy's just like me kind of thing. But as it goes on, and actually, as Freddie Prinze Jr., is sort of more ingratiated in the show, and they get to less about, okay, let's only talk about Izzy and adopting her, and let's be more of a family show and family inclusive, and let's give all the characters in the family something to do. I think it does get better as it goes along, but I was a little bit kind of bummed out about this show because it's just not funny. It's got great heart. I think it is good for families. A couple of risque jokes, but I think families can watch this together and enjoy it, but I just wish the punchlines were punched up a little bit. But I think everybody, Soleil Moon Frye and Sherry Johnson assumed the roles, properly. I think they are pretty good actors. And I liked Soleil Moon Frye on Sabrina the Teenage Witch as well as one of the friends. But all in all, I will leave Punky Brewster with a B-. But I think it's mainly for nostalgia. I think if you never watched the original, you have no interest in these characters, it's probably more of like a C. So proceed with caution on it. Up next, let's talk about Superman and Lois. This is on the CW, and it is part of the Arrowverse, which I wasn't sure of at first. I knew Greg Berlanti was, producing it, and the showrunner and all of this, and he, rules the Arrowverse over there, which I don't know why it's called the Arrowverse instead of the DC universe or whatever, but I guess because Arrow was the first of their big shows. But they have so many shows under that umbrella at this point that are all, I guess, connected in some way or the other. And in fact, the same actors that played Superman and Lois Lane on Supergirl are reprising their roles here for this show, which is Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch, I think, or Tulloch. She plays Lois Lane. So basically, they return to Smallville in the first episode, and I don't think this gets too spoiler because it happens pretty early on, but basically Superman's mom, Martha Kent, she passes away in like the second or third scene of the pilot, and so they return to Smallville with their sons in tow, Jonathan and Jordan. They are reacquainted there with Lana Lang and her husband Kyle, and their daughter Sarah, who is sort of getting along with the boys. And even the first episode has, villain of the week kind of things going on, as we have, Superman battling one of his villains. What I liked about this show, first of all, we've done Superman to death, right? Between the movies and the other shows and then the other movies and all of this. We've got so many. over the course of my lifetime only, and of course Superman dates back to the 30s, but just in my lifetime we've had the Christopher Reeve movies, and then we've had now the Zack Snyder movies and the Justice League and all that, and then we also had the TV show with Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain, and then we've had Smallville, and so, all right. I've seen some of the stuff. I have not seen all. I know my buddy Joe that I do reviews with, wants to go back to the very beginning and start doing the serials from the 40s onto the 50s black and white TV show on forward. Who knows if we're gonna how much ground we're gonna cover there. But I did watch about half a season of the Terry Hatcher version a few years back, maybe 10 or 12 years ago when it was on DVD for the first time, and it was kind of schmaltzy and corny and soapy, and also the technology. They didn't have the budgets that they have now. They didn't have the technology that they have now. So this show looks great. I think we can all agree that the budgets on a lot of these TV shows these days can rival movies in some instances. And I think the Arrowverse is sort of the shining beacon in the DC Universe crown, because their movies typically are not that beloved. The first Wonder Woman, yes, but that's about it. The second Wonder Woman, no. Suicide Squad, not so much. Batman v Superman, what a mess. So they're really keeping all of their hot storylines here, I think, for these shows. What I like about this Superman and Lois is that it does focus on the family. Whereas Lois and Clark in the 90s with Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain was all about their relationship and all about that kind of stuff. The movies really have all been about, just Superman and Lois and Clark Kent and Lois and this and that, and working at the Daily Planet and this and that, which, by the way, he loses his job in this pilot as well, which is another reason they decide, well, let's move to Smallville and take over my mom's old house. But we also realize in this pilot that maybe one of their kids has some special powers as well, and they've also been hiding their father's identity as Superman from them. So that becomes a major plot in the first episode as well. But look, this is sort of following along what the comics are doing. Superboy is kind of a big part of the Superman comics lately, from what I understand. So I think it makes sense to have this show be more about Superboy and Superman. And look, it's the CW. Tyler Hoechlin, he's a good-looking dude, to me. But I'm in my 40s. The typical demo of the CW is going to be about half my age or less. And so you need some hot young guys on the show as well. So if this show can be as much about that as Superman, that's fine. And the reason I think it doesn't bother me here, as in some of the other CW shows, is because it makes sense. It makes sense with the comics. Yes, they do have kids. Yes, one of them is Superboy, and there we go. So the themes kind of write themselves. But the show looks very good. I think Tyler Hoechlin is a really good Superman. I don't watch Supergirl. I watched some of the original season on CBS, but I haven't watched it at all from the CW. So I don't know this dude. I haven't seen him play Superman before, but obviously it was successful enough on Supergirl. They gave him his own show, and I can see why. I think he is a great Superman. The gal that's playing Lois Lane, what's her name again? Elizabeth Tulloch. She's okay. However, I think Lois has really been a top-tier performer in recent years, because you have Amy Adams doing it in the movies, and I think even Terry Hatcher, for as sort of fun and soapy as that role was, she was a very good Lois Lane. This one is, I think, okay, but I think the main focal point of the show is going to be Superman and the kids anyway. And I don't know that they will write very meaty arcs for the Lois Lane character. I could be very wrong, but at least in this first episode, she's barely a blip. Really, she's there as sort of window dressing, and she's a comfort to the family, but she doesn't have any sort of character development. But maybe people know things about her already from Supergirl. It's hard to say. But I thought this was a pretty good effort. If I was into the Arrowverse, I think I would keep along with this show. For now, I'm going to leave Superman and Lois with a B+. I think it's pretty well done, and hopefully fans will like it as well. So up next, let's move to Netflix for 2 drama shows. The first is a psychological thriller that is a 1-episode mini-series called Behind, or not 1 episode, 1-season mini-series called Behind Her Eyes. The other one is more of a dramedy called Ginny Georgia. So let's talk about Behind Her Eyes first. This is getting an interesting response both from critics and audiences because the ending apparently has a big twist and is very divisive. So I don't know, but since it's Netflix, you can watch all 6 of these shows right now if you want to. I watched the first 2 of them to get a good feel for these characters, and basically what's happening is Louise is sort of at the center of this, played by Simona Brown, and she's a single mother who begins an affair with her new boss, David, played by Tom Bateman, and then she becomes best friends with David's wife, Adele, played by Eve Hewson, and it sort of goes from there in terms of like secrecy and betrayal, and he's cheating on the wife, but the wife's my best friend and all that. So it's very, very soapy and very like who's sleeping with who and who's doing what. But I'm actually glad I watched the second episode because it really gives a more sort of psychological thriller aspect to it. The first episode, I don't necessarily want to say it moves slowly, but they're just when I read it was a psychological thriller, the first episode really have none of that. We're just sort of getting to know these characters a little bit. We're getting to know Louise and her son and everything, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, I don't see this as a psychological thriller. It's not very psychological, and it's not much of a thriller. But then see episode 2, you saw more of this, and then her friendship with the wife becomes even more sort of prevalent and all of that. So you could see sort of why it would get that moniker. I thought about watching all 5 episodes of this before grading it because I know there's some sort of twist at the end, and you're either going to love it or hate it. So I can't base my grade on how it ends. But look, with all my movie watching for the Golden Globes and everything, I didn't have time to watch 5 hours of a miniseries that I wasn't really that invested in to begin with. Like, because of that slow start, like, I barely even liked these characters. And then episode 2, I was like, okay, now I'm a little more invested, certainly. And I probably will watch it to see how it turns out, especially because my one friend recommended it to me because she wants to know how I liked the ending. So I guess for that. But the dialogue is very sort of stale and like classic, soap opera thriller. Like it makes me think of a lot of those thriller movies, like the knockoff Fatal Attractions that we've seen, the last few years popping up a lot. So I think this is okay. For now, I'm going to leave the show with a C+, Behind Her Eyes. And I say that sort of with hesitation because it's like, if it's a great twist, then, I could bump it up to maybe a B or something. But if it's a really stupid twist at the end, that might ruin it even further. So I think C+ is probably a good sort of starting point for this show, and then see where it goes from there. So let's move on here. I try to, when I have 6 reviews, I try to do, the last few in just a few minutes. So let's try to move through these. Ginny Georgia is next. This is on Netflix as well. Like I said, all 10 episodes, of course, are streaming right now. And this is following Ginny Miller, who is a 15-year-old girl played by newcomer Antonia Gentry. And she is basically more mature than her 30-year-old mother, Georgia, played by Brienne Howie. And yes, if you do the math for that, Georgia had Ginny when she was just 15 herself. And there's also a little boy as well, named Austin, who's played by this kid, Diesel La Taraka. And he is named Austin because that's where he was born. And she's named Ginny because Virginia is where she was born. So that's sort of the thread of their family. And they decide to move into a New England town, settling down to give them a better life than what she had. Now, on the surface, these first couple episodes, and again, I watched 2 of the 10 here. The first couple episodes, well, we start off with kind of a Gilmore Girls vibe almost, because you've got this strong mother-daughter bond, and the daughter is a little more mature in some ways than the mom, and they're just living life, them against the world kind of thing. And in this case, yeah, there's another kid as well, but the focal point, obviously, from the name of the show, is the 2 gals. But we sort of unravel a bunch of stuff going on in episode 2 and forward about the past with Georgia, and the life that she came from, and some of the abuse that she suffered, and some of the double crossing maybe that went on between some of her past loves or friends, or we don't know yet, and who knows what the kids so far know. Austin is having a hard time at school, getting a bit bullied, and so Georgia decides to kind of twist it around on some of his classmates that are bullying him, sort of in like a bad moms type situation. I think this show, it's billed as a drama. I think it's definitely a dramedy. I think it's going for a little bit of that sort of Gilmore Girls fast-paced commentary sort of thing. But I think what will hook the viewers is not that, but the mysterious elements of Georgia's past, and what did happen, and what people in her life know, and who is she trying to hide it from, and who is she trying to hide from. So all of this, I assume sort of gets unraveled as the season goes on. There's right now a big backlash on this show from Taylor Swift fans, because I usually look up the Rotten score from critics and audiences, before I do the reviews, just to kind of see if I'm in line with people or not, because I like to say, like, well, critically this is beloved, or whatever. This has like an 11% or something with audiences, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And all of these comments from the audience are respect Taylor Swift, respect Taylor. There's a joke in one of the later episodes, it's either 9 or 10, where they talk about, you've gone through more guys than Taylor Swift or something. And look, I watched the Taylor Swift documentary Miss Americana recently, and yes, that's obviously a bullying type of issue where you're basically slut-shaming her kind of thing. I think maybe they could have taken that line out of the show, especially because that documentary was on Netflix, and Taylor Swift has a pretty good relationship with Netflix, so it seems odd that would sort of get through. But look, aside from that, I haven't gotten to that episode. Yeah, that's a joke in poor taste, certainly in 2021. But I'm not going to grade an entire series based on one sort of joke that falls flat, or is a little bit out of line, let's say. And yes, respect Taylor Swift always. She's effing amazing. But anyway, I think this is an interesting show. I am curious to see what's going on with these characters and where they go from here. And I do kind of like the Gilmore Girls style vibe to it. It's not nearly as good as that show. But again, Netflix did the Gilmore Girls movie, so it's like they sort of want to be in that business as well. I would say this is maybe a cheaper kind of knockoff of a Gilmore Girls, but you add all of that mystery element on top of it, and it makes it more of like a CW type show, but I don't think there's anything supernatural going on. I think it's maybe some, mob dealings, or maybe some drug dealings. I'm not sure. Unclear yet. But I think you could definitely give this show a go if you do sort of like the vibes that I'm giving you about it. I leave Ginny and Georgia with a B. Up next, we're going to talk about It's a Sin. This is over on HBO Max. And it's originally from a British channel. What is it? From Channel 4. And actually, this was a hard one to make for the creators. Russell T. Davies is the person who is at the helm of this. He created it, and he created things like Queer as Folk and Cucumber, which is another gay show. But he also did the 2005 version of Doctor Who. I don't know who the Doctor was in that one for you Who fans, but so anyway, this guy's been around, and certainly in the British, universe, he's been around for a while. And this is a story that he wanted to tell for a long, long time, and just really couldn't, because it was not something that was really acceptable to even talk about. This show is all about the HIV and AIDS crisis of the 80s, and this was a hard one for him to sell to British television. BBC One didn't want it. ITV didn't want it. Finally, Channel 4 decided to take a chance on it, but made him cut it down from 8 episodes to 5. And it basically follows a group of gay men who moved to London for various reasons in 1981. They form a friendship group, but with HIV and AIDS developing quickly over in the UK, it's all impacting their lives. And so we go in these 5 episodes through an entire decade. It ends in 1991. And some of the characters, I'm 2 episodes in. This is another one I really actually wanted to watch all 5 of this, and just didn't quite have the time yet. But in just 2 episodes, there are a couple of deaths from HIV and AIDS, and it's very scary. So you won't probably know too many of the people in the show. Neil Patrick Harris does have a small role as one of their sort of side buddies, Henry. But the star of the show, Ollie Alexander, if you are a music fan, you may know the band Years and Years. It's an electronic pop group from the UK, which I love, by the way. Some of their songs are just like my favorites of the last decade. I love this band, so I kind of recognized the guy. At first, I'm like, where do I know that guy from? So I look up the name, and I'm like, okay, it's Ollie. He's the lead singer of this band, Years and Years. And I don't know how much acting he's done, really. Some of his videos are very elaborate, and so he does some acting in those, but nothing on this scale. And it is kind of an ensemble, but he's listed as the top star. Some of the other people involved, Omari Douglas, Caleb Scott Howells, and Lydia West. So again, people that we maybe really don't know, but they're all gay in real life, or at least bisexual. I think Ollie's bi, but that's something that was very important for Russell T Davies to do, because he wasn't able to do that with Queer as Folk. I mean, look, Queer as Folk is highly regarded as a great show and a real stepping stone in the gay community in terms of representation in the media, but everybody on that show was straight, because look, in 1998 when it got created, there weren't a lot of out gay actors. Even Neil Patrick Harris wasn't out yet. And I think he's one of the male trailblazers for sure. And I think 98 would have been before even Will and Grace started. So obviously he wasn't going to have gay actors in those roles, or if they were, they weren't going to be out. But so here he specifically chose all gay and bisexual actors. And look, that's fine. I'm not one of these people who are only gays must play gay. It's fine. I like representation though, and so far in the last few months we've seen several impressions of that, like The Boys in the Band, which was Ryan Murphy, and that was an all-gay cast, and that's fine. Like either or, straight or gay, as long as you do a great job in the role and you're very reverent to the gay community, it's fine. But look, HIV and AIDS is something that is obviously very near and dear to our hearts, and I luckily by the time I was sexually active in the 90s, it wasn't as much of a question mark. It wasn't as much as a huge crisis. I remember really hearing about it, I guess, in the late 80s for the first time with maybe Robert Reed from the Brady Bunch when he had passed. Certainly I knew about it before Freddie Mercury, but anyway, that's getting off on a tangent. Let's talk about the show. But anyway, this is a topic that is very, I think, sensitive to a lot of gay people, which is why the movie Philadelphia is so revered. And I think this show does a really good job of, like in the first episode, they're sort of just hearing about it. And then in the second episode, they're sort of like denying it, like, oh, well, how would it be a gay disease? Like, what, does the disease know, who's gay and who's straight and all of this? Because nobody understood it. And it, I think it's a great portrayal of how the community really did deal with it back in the day, which was a lot of sort of question marks and sort of even some humor, because they're like, well, that's stupid, da-da-da-da-da, or with the idea that it can't affect them. And we see this through all of the different characters in different ways. It manifests in different ways, and I found that to be very, very authentic. The style from episode 1 to episode 2 is a little different too. I'm not sure if the style is going to change from episode to episode, but season 2 or episode 2, I could say, there was a dance number, And no, they're working at a club, at this point, so that makes sense. But like, it was sort of breaking the fourth wall type dance number. I don't know if that continues. I thought that was a little bit odd that we didn't see that at all in the first episode. So I don't know how that affects it, but I think the portrayals here are authentic. I think the script is authentic, and I think this is going to be an important show, certainly for the gay community, and I think this may go down as one of the biggies for 2021 in terms of miniseries dramas. I give It's a Sin an A-. So let's close with a game show. We always like to do like a game show at the end if there's a new one. Cherries Wild is the new one, and it's on Fox. Jason Biggs is the host, and it's sponsored by Pepsi because of their Wild Cherry Pepsi style or flavor, I guess you would call it. Their brand. So they're, basically producing this, they're sponsoring it, they talk about Pepsi in the show, and it's a trivia contest with a giant slot machine. And the idea is hopefully to get all 5 cherries, and then you win $250,000. There's things I like and things I don't like. Jason Biggs as a host, I think, does a good job. He is self-deprecating about his career. I've always liked Jason Biggs. I think he's a funny dude, and he sort of gets the Jason Biggs thing. He gets that, he is famous for having sex with a pie on screen. He gets it. And he just seems like a likable dude. I wish his projects were better. That sitcom he had last year was terrible, outmatched. But that was on Fox too, so he obviously got in good with some of the suits at Fox, and they invited him to host this. Good host. The trivia questions therein, I think, are pretty interesting. And there's some of these where it's like he'll give you 4 choices on the slot board, and then you pull the jackpot lever or whatever. Well, you don't really do that. You hit a button. But anyway, the lever goes, and then you see what you earned, or if you're wrong, they give you an X, whatever. So the game dynamics are kind of interesting. The trivia questions, I think, are interesting enough. You could win free cherries, which means you get automatic cherries for the final spin when you're hoping to get 5. You can buy extra spins with some of your winnings from the earlier trivia questions. Etc., etc. And then as the rounds move on, like in most game shows, the amounts on the wheel become, or on the slot machine, become higher. So in the first round, what might be $2,000 becomes, $15,000 or $20,000. What I don't like about it is the slot machine dynamic. I really don't like games where an electronic slot machine is going to decide your fate. I find that to be not realistic. The wall with Chris Hardwick, at least you're sort of dropping a chip like a Plinko board or whatever. And so, the little divots on the board will sort of determine where the chip goes. But this is all completely electronic. And I paused I freeze framed the end of the episode, and it said something about how, one successful code on game taping days will be eligible. So basically only one of the set of contestants in any taping day, which usually a taping day is 5 to 8 episodes of a show, of a game show. So only one pair of contestants is going to be able to win the $250,000 at the end of the day. And that means they have to do everything right. It's like, it just seems unreasonable. And so I don't like that dynamic of it. One other thing I do like about it, though, is it's a half hour. All these shows on ABC, and I like watching them, and some of them need to be an hour. The Chase, that needs to be an hour. The Hustler, that needs to be an hour. But a lot of them, they just play 2 games. Like the match game, Celebrity Wheel of Fortune, it's like, well, it's only a half-hour show, but we have an hour slot, so we'll just play 2 games. Card Sharks does the same thing. So I appreciate that this show is actually only a half hour, because that's all it really needs. Spin the wheel's an hour, the wall is an hour. We don't necessarily need all of that. So I like that, but overall, just the dynamic of the slot machine, I don't really care for. It makes me frustrated because the contestant really then has zero control over their fate. It's all kind of predetermined from these codes that are put in the Pepsi slot machine. Whether they get the question right or not, similar things are going to come up on the machine. And I don't like the dynamic of that. So because of that, I do have to give it a slightly negative grade. But I like Jason Biggs as a host. I think the trivia rounds are fun, but like Name That Tune, it's you against the tunes. You either know the tune or you don't. But it would be like them having a big board and name that tune where it's like you know the tune but you still don't get it right, or whatever. It's like I don't like that the contestant doesn't have final say in their own fate. So I leave Cherries Wild with a C-. All right, so hey, we got them in under an hour. I wasn't sure we would. We had 6 reviews. We had a ton of news to talk about. Next week's show I think is going to be pretty short because it's really going to just be Paramount Plus. Is it worth it? And so we'll talk about a couple of their new shows. I know they have The Real World premiering this weekend, the revival of that, with the gang from the first season sort of doing it again for us. So we'll talk about that. Talk about some other things on there. But we'll have a regular episode in 2 more weeks. There's already a lot of shows to talk about with that. ABC's Soul of a Nation for one. Couple new shows on Netflix. There's a new show on Amazon that just premiered 2 days ago, I think, that we'll be watching. So a lot of stuff coming out, and we'll cover it all. Don't worry. So thanks for watching. We'll see you here next time. Bye.